Why is this broken? Okay, cool. So we are recording. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a time delayed meeting of the Standards Working Group for OpenJS Foundation. Once again, we have live streaming issues, but technology, yay. We start with some announcements for our agenda today, and we have several very exciting ones to share. Robin, would you like to share some of our biggest breaking news for today?
Biggest breaking news is the Sovereign Tech Fund out of the German government is funding the OpenJS Foundation to the tune of almost just a little over $900,000. Longtime community, open source community folks, Adriana, Fiona, and Tara have been sort of championing that work inside the government. And this is the largest one-time government contribution to any open source project that we know of. And it's not, of course, just one project. We have 41, but hopefully everything that we do will scale more broadly to all of the JavaScript projects in the world. Joe Seppi is going to be taking a lot of the work from OpenSSF through the OpenJS Security Collab space and customizing that for JavaScript. We'll have audits, and we're going to have shiny new infrastructure for a lot of our projects, which is sorely needed because many have been around for a long time. So exciting news.
It's huge news. I'm so excited. I mean, this is going to be such a big difference maker for some of our projects like jQuery that have had to sustain and change and improve infrastructure. That's such a big lift for projects. And so just echo all of the excitement and gratitude. So tell your friends, you know, and repost for us if then you don't mind. That's a big announcement. So other just reminder / announcement-y things, there's something happening next week. It's OpenJS World and the Collab Summit. So if you are going to be in Vancouver, we hope to see you there on Tuesday. There's lots going on. If you can't make it to Vancouver, some of the Collab Summit's going to be live streamed. Some of the virtual talks will be there for the event. Of course, we'll record a lot of the talks and have those up later. So it's going to be a good time. And if you're around, let us know. We'd love to say hi in person. The other thing that we are reminding folks is that the Secure the Web Forward workshop that we're doing with W3C and OpenSSF and OWASP, we're still sourcing proposals for that. Would love your help connecting with folks who have something you know, to say, something to contribute, some big idea, because securing the web is a really important effort. It's going to take all of us. So we're going to have a little session in London in June, and would like to have some really great ideas and thinkers there for that. So Secure the Web Forward. And then other kind of fun thing to celebrate, the 30th anniversary of Tim Berners-Lee releasing the web platform effectively as royalty-free platform. It was yesterday or day before yesterday. It's just something fun to acknowledge, because I think we can all agree that royalty-free standards have changed our lives. So thanks, Tim. You know, really appreciate that. Yeah, Leah.
Sorry, accidental.
Oh, okay. So anyway, I think that's worth celebrating, and I'm sure the W3C would love to love your boost and your you know your applause. A month, yes, sir.
Yeah, I've seen few videos where Tim Berners-Lee puts his title as web developer. I would rather say it's kind of a typo that it should be developer of web.
Or the, like, you just put the you know. Yeah. So definitely. All right, so those are some of the announcements. There's always a lot more going on, but any other announcements from projects before we move into sort of the regular business? That we've got some reports from groups, we got other stuff like that. So nope. Okay. All right. So let's move to just reports from our liaison relationships, and Leah had suggested on the issue that she could provide a bit of an update from the tag face-to-face that was last week, week before last in Tokyo. So take it away, Leah.
Yeah, it was 18 to 21 of April. So I think 2 weeks ago. I'm not going to get into detail about the design reviews we did or the design principles we did specifically, but there are two things that I think would be interesting to this group. The first thing is we agreed that we have a lot of work and we need more input from more people. Sometimes we lack experts on all the topics that matter in a design review. For example, right now we don't have an accessibility expert. We don't have a security expert, and so on. We have very few API design people, and so on. So we are going to ask the AC for 3 more seats. And we actually had Florian from the AC from the AB. Sorry, I meant AB. We had Florian from the AB in some of our meetings, and it looks like the AB sees this positively. So we're going to ask for 3 more seats, 2 elected and 1 appointed. So right now we have 3 appointed seats. That will equalize the number of appointed seats per election cycle. Because in the new process, the appointments are going to happen after the election to sort of fill in gaps that are left after the election results. And we're also going to get 1 extra seat per election cycle. But also we agreed to have this new concept of a deputy tag member, which the name is to be bike shedded. We are considering like 10 different names for this, like liaison or associate or whatever. Like there's many different names. But basically, these will sort of be lightweight tag members that we can appoint to also to fill in gaps. And there's multiple reasons for these. Like what came up was one of the members in the tag today wants to retire at some point. He's been in the tag for way too long, but he wants to sort of train his successor. But right now, nobody really gets exposure to how the tag works on the inside until they're actually elected to it. So part of this would be to like train people that might eventually make it to the tag, or as an additional mechanism to get wider input, to get more eyes on design reviews. And this will be for a year. It will end either after the year passes, or if they get elected to the tag. Each tag member can sponsor, and I put sponsor in quotes because it's not financial, but each tag member can sponsor 1 deputy tag member. But of course that can change. Like I might sponsor someone next year, someone can sponsor them, and so on. And the other thing we discussed quite a lot. So as you may know, I recently joined TC39, and one of the reasons that I joined was to facilitate closer collaboration between TAG and TC39. I feel that today we have multiple standards groups designing JavaScript APIs for the web platform, and they're not really working together very much. They operate under entirely different design principles. And so far, we've had a lot more WG input in our design principles than we've had TC39 input. So there's the occasional TC39 person that floats by, but like it's very rare. And you can actually see this in the APIs. Like they are very different. Like you can look at the design of an API and you can tell if it was designed by WG or TC39. And I think that is wrong. That hurts developers in the end, this lack of consistency. So one of the things in general, in the abstract, the group agrees that we should have more TC39 input. The devil's always in the details. One thing we agreed to do was to have a TC39 tracker label in our design principles repos for things that we would like, that we think TC39 input would be useful on. So we spent some time adding this label to existing issues where it's relevant. And I also posted in the Reflector repo on the TC39 side, inviting people to comment on issues with that label and to, like, if they're interested in giving us feedback, to sort of keep an eye on that label in the future. And we did actually get some people that came in and offered advice. Another thing is, right now, our design principles document is very web-centric, and JavaScript is more broad than that. And I think we should try as much as possible to be inclusive of non-web use cases, especially like we have a lot of design principles that are around designing JavaScript APIs. These do not necessarily just apply to web-based JavaScript APIs. They could easily apply to other use cases, such as Node.js APIs. So I suggested that we can reward our principles to make them more inclusive of these use cases. Like, for example, right now, a lot of principles begin with, this is how you define this in WebIDL. And I think this makes them less comprehensible to developers, because developers don't know how WebIDL works. And these kinds of API design principles would be useful for developers as well. Like, we have an ongoing project to create a subset of these principles targeted to developers. But also, centering them around WebIDL means that people designing APIs that don't use WebIDL also can't really follow these principles. So I did face some pushback on that. The argument against it was that there are many people in browsers that only know WebIDL. They do not use JavaScript in their own jobs. So if without the WebIDL guidance, or if we deprioritize the WebIDL guidance, they might not know how to follow this its principle. Like, for example, I submitted a PR as like an example to have something concrete, rewarding an existing principle to sort of replace the wording around WebIDL attributes and convert it to wording like JavaScript accessors. And it turned out that even people in the room were not familiar with the term JavaScript accessor. So that kind of fell flat, because then they were like, well, browser people designing APIs will not understand this. So yeah, that is an ongoing effort. I'm not sure how to advance that further. I mean, we do seem to be aligned in terms of the goal, but in terms of how to actually get there, that needs more work. But it seems to be moving in a positive direction.
Jordan.
Yeah, I was just, why are people that don't write a language X designing APIs for a language X? That seems like a guaranteed way to make a really crappy unidiomatic API. Like, if they're not familiar with JavaScript, they are not qualified to write JavaScript API, is what I would say. And I think that explains a lot of web APIs.
Yep. +1,000 to that.
Like, I'm fine with like WebIDL existing as a system to codify the way they're written, but like, familiarity with WebIDL is like, shouldn't be a requirement to write the APIs. Familiarity with JavaScript should be. I don't know, that as far as being more inclusive, like, I think that's a big point that needs to be considered. And I think another one is that a lot of web APIs seem designed from a mindset that's sort of inferable from the discussions of the web is the most important thing. And whether this is true or not shouldn't be relevant. And TC39 tries not to, I think, have that mindset. And that is how you get to be more inclusive. And so there's a lot of web APIs that in a universal mindset are bad. They might be great for the web, but like Fetch made a few decisions that could have been made differently, and it would have been a perfectly universal tool. And instead it's something that Node and Deno are shipping, but it can never match the web one. And somebody like that is going to create bugs for people. But like, I don't know, I would love to see more inclusive API design. I just think that it's really important that that folks who may have a default assumption of their correctness should reevaluate that assumption.
I totally second Jordan here, because we do have a lot of implementers in the TC10 panel too, who definitely understands JavaScript in and out, and they are implementing things on the browser. So there is an understanding of how JavaScript works, and which is essential. And also, like, for example, at times even folks are kind of confused whether this is part of TC39 or is this part of WG. Like, when we have folks putting up proposals or discussing in forums, we normally tend to redirect them that, hey, this API belongs to probably WG, or either way around. right? But I think we should have synergy there, saying that we work together and we might implement it independently, but while at least solutioning or coming up with a design, if we work together, it would be a better place. For example, the URL API too, right? Where should it reside, or what are the patterns that it apply, like. So like fetch, as Jordan mentioned too. So it's definitely a good sign, and I hope we will get there. I did see the issue on the reflector. Thank you.
So Leah, I saw like so many people nodding their heads in support of what you were sharing. I think the question for this group might be, what can OpenJS do to kind of lift its voice in support of that pattern? And to your point, like, devil's in the details in terms of how this might all shake out, but let's get into some details. Like, what is it that we can do to like support this direction for the tag? It sounds like, you know, there's some energy. I hate to see it stall because we don't know where to place the apostrophe on a sentence or something like that. So yeah, that's my follow-up question.
That is an excellent question. To be honest, I haven't really thought about this. I mean, OpenJS already has a lot of TC39 members. The more they can get involved, the easier it will be to make the case that these principles should be more inclusive of these use cases. But apart from that, I'm not quite sure. I will think about this and post with ideas if I come up with any.
I just want to add this example. We had the accessor, right, which got influenced more from how what WG had implemented, right, from the web implementation, which we took the good parts and improvised the proposal. So it would be great to see more such instances where we are taking good parts from what the web platform has implemented and TC39 and the other way around. That would be really great to see. I think there are a few such instances. Jordan can like name it like right from his head, but there are a few such instances where we picked up good parts from the web too. It's not just saying that because folks don't understand JavaScript, the APIs aren't good, but there are some good parts that we have picked up too.
Right. Yeah, it's not that they're all bad. It's just like there's, like you're talking about API design and consistency, and the consistency that's important to me is consistency with the language and with the ecosystem. And that is something that far eclipses the web's built-in APIs.
Right. But to your point, familiarity matters a lot.
Of course.
You can't design APIs for an ecosystem that is foreign to you.
Correct. Yeah, whatever that may be. No one should have me coming in and writing Java APIs or C++ APIs. Like that wouldn't go over well.
I completely agree, but I'm not sure how we could reverse that, given that it's browser engineers writing these APIs. I mean, we do stop or iterate on some of these in design reviews. Like if they submit a review for a JavaScript API that is totally inconsistent with the web, then they're going to get the feedback that here are some ways you can change this to be more consistent with the way the web works. But also, often when they submit a design review for an API that has a bunch of issues, it's easy to get lost in some of the issues, especially based on the expertise of who is doing the review, because it's not usually the entire tag doing a review, it's certain people. So for example, there's people in the tag that specialize in security and privacy, and they might look at these aspects closer and sort of miss any API design issues that the API might have. And this happens a lot, especially since we have so much workload. Hopefully getting more people will help with that a bit.
But why is someone proposing a feature, an API for JavaScript, if they don't write it? Like the people who propose it should be the ones who need it and will use it, and only them.
It's browser engineers that are primarily writing C++ for browsers and don't actually write JavaScript themselves. And
but that's what I mean. Like, why? What's their motivation? Is my question.
I agree with you, but like if their employers are assigning them this task, and their employers in general are pretty unwilling to pay people to develop standards. A lot of standards work tends to fall on browser developers. Like there's very few people working on standards full time, even at the big companies. Like very few compared to the amount of work that needs to be done. Like the sheer amount of features added to the web platform is wild.
right?
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Jared.
but it's just, I was gonna say, like, it strikes me as like a product compatibility problem that they're solving, like first and foremost, and then sort of the everything else from that standpoint just sort of is like downstream, where what we are advocating for in our position is more like a user-centered, you know, approach, which is not always the way that big product companies think about this. So at this level,
That
But
is
like
why.
part of the what WG requirements, right, is that browsers have to indicate interest. So why isn't that JavaScript developers have to indicate interest? Like, is that not part of the process?
That is an excellent point.
That seems more important than like equally important, at least, as browser interest, right? Like browser interest, of course, makes sure, like, determines if it can be developed, but like if no JavaScript developers are asking for it, why would anyone waste time building it?
But also, even if JavaScript developers are asking for it, like often JavaScript developers just want a way to do something.
True.
And how painful the API is something that hits them way later when it's too late to change it at that point.
Also true.
But I wanted to say to Jory, the user-centered aspect of this is like that is one of the things that we are trying to do with tag reviews. Like this is an explicit goal that we're supposed to review for. Like, what are the user needs? Does this solution satisfy the user needs well or at all? Like this is something that people need to include in their explainer, and if they don't, then they get the feedback that, you know, you need to include the user needs in your explainer.
So this is like exactly why we convene, is to tackle this kind of conversation among our groups, among our projects. I'm thinking about just the timing, because next week is also the advisory council or AC meeting for advisory committee. I don't actually remember what C stands for anymore. Come to think of it, there's too many acronyms.
I believe committee.
Committee, okay, yeah. The AC meeting is in France, and this is a kind of a segue to one of our other agenda items, which is sending Toby as an alternate next week. Is there anything that we can do potentially to you know, help foster and move that conversation along in person next week, if we have a delegate there present? That's another kind of question in terms of support. Do you think this will come up? Maybe not.
I don't remember anything similar on the agenda, but I think what OpenJS could do is, well, sort of harness the user. I mean, sort of jump on the whatever the RFC is about, priority of users, and that's a meta conversation going on at W3C, and making it more operational, what it means to pay attention to user needs, or prioritize user needs over the C++ implementer who is looking at the web IDL. I think it's an excellent point. But to the extent that we have an organized community that has the resources to like send people to meetings, or like with Leah, support their engagement. I mean, with Toby's not on the call, is he? But
No, he's not today.
yeah, I mean, but having a sort of mini position paper on, to the extent that we well, either you or whoever goes to W3C meetings says, here's sort of the list of issues, the top 3 issues our members care about, and here's a straw man proposal for how we could do better. I mean, that would be great. I think now that now that W3C is getting out of its sort of staring its navel on what it is, so that it can figure out how to actually get organized. That's more. I think we're past where that's got momentum now, and hopefully the AC and the AB can focus on actually improving the process and the product. And so yeah, I think to the extent that we're sort of a caucus for process considerations, meta strategy considerations, like how do we get the server-side JavaScript and the browser JavaScript developers having a somewhat coherent user experience? How do we make real the user priority? I think those are all things we could do if we put some effort into.
And if you all could quantify the kind of feedback you'd like to get, we could do some spot surveys. We've been doing that for a few years with the Node.js Next 10 project. We've done it for Fastify. We'll get up to like 2,000 responses from our surveys on social. So if you knew the exact kind of feedback you'd like to receive, we do have some open-ended questions, but a lot of them are not, obviously.
There's a point in the chat about intent to ship being the a standard signal. I mean, I think that's another area we could invest in, is being a lobby to the to Chromium. I mean, since we're open source people, we're code people, we in principle talk Chromium's language better than a lot of the people who hang around at W3C. So to the extent that we could be a sort of a knocking heads together in the Chromium world, the standards world, and the JavaScript users, or web developers, web and server-side developers world, I think we could be very valuable force.
How do you picture this happening in practice?
You got to send people to meetings with an agenda. You got to file issues in GitHub. You got to rally. Got to work the back channels to make sure people understand what the concern is, and make sure that proposals, are constructive. So yeah, there's a lot of work behind the scenes to make this kind of stuff happen. It's not just filing issues or going to meetings. It's making people at Google, understand that here's how you can pay more attention to, these users that you claim to prioritize.
But we already send people to meetings, and people are generally already encouraged to participate. So I'm wondering what else can be done.
I think one of the points that Mike Champion is making, which I really agree with, is like we send people, but we don't always send them with a really strong point of view to like advocate for, or a really strong, well-defined problem to say this is the pain. It's just sort of like we're showing up because we all have generalized pain, and we go to the doctor's office and we're like, my knee hurts kind of, but that could be, something else. So I think what we can do as a community is try and get more specific on what those pain points are, and send folks who can articulate that more clearly, and possible solutions for that. That's where my mind goes, because I think typically there's a lot of alignment with what we idealize and what we want to accomplish, but not a lot of sensibility about like what the solution is, or really what's the source problem. Is that like the, first order problem, or is that more of an after problem of something else? That I don't know. That's the way I look at it. That's my 2 cents.
That makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, the fact that, we're talking about the tag meeting and the person we sponsor on the tag is leading that discussion. And, I think the next step would be for us, or, for the community that this group represents to, help, give Leah some, some bullet points, some talking points, some examples, some straw man proposals for how, how this could work better. And yeah, Jordan's point about, if you want to appeal to JavaScript developers, how about you have JavaScript developers having a leading role in designing the APIs is, pretty profound.
I mean, we can make that recommendation to companies, but whether they adopt it or not is not something that any standards group really controls. And I believe,
I mean, one of the lessons I learned is that, standards are developed by the people who do the work, not the people who, cast the votes. And to the extent we can either sponsor people to do the work, or have this infrastructure where we can aggregate opinions and communicate them to our representatives. Sponsor sort of the equivalent of an invited expert to say, here your your contractor, your 20% job is to represent the point of view of this community in such and such a forum. TC39, even Huawei G in principle is wide open. It's in de facto controlled by a handful of people who do the work. If we really wanted to make an influence on Huawei G, we'd do what Google does and pay people to actually work at Huawei G. We the community, not necessarily OpenJS Foundation. Anyway, I'm just kind of off the top of my head, but and I wouldn't at all minimize the importance of just having these kinds of conversations to make sure that the people in the TC39 world and the W3C world are talking to each other and understanding points of view, and aren't, getting into turf wars about silly things.
I need to kind of segue us to the other agenda topics, but this has probably been the most valuable use of our time. I will say on the point that you're just making, Mike Champion, that's what makes this group so unique, and I think very potentially important and helpful here, because we are bringing W3C developers and TC39 developers into just giving them the space here through our projects to talk about these kinds of things is a great start to the problem, and we should really highlight that for for these communities. Let me ask really quickly if there were any other updates from any of our other liaisons this week. Was there any news from TC39 to share, Jordan or Richard or Joe?
I mean, plenary is the week after OSSNA, so there's not much new until that point. But pay attention to the agenda. The deadline will be in the middle of about a week from now. So
cool.
Yeah.
ECMA's Secretary General will be, or Secretary General elect will be at OSSNA as well.
That's wonderful.
So yeah, so you'll be able to meet her in real life if you haven't done that yet.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love that.
So to the point about sending people to participate and raise our concerns, we have a couple of issues for W3C and Toby. Toby had opened an issue and a pull request to be designated as the AC alternate for next week's face-to-face meeting after some like spelunking through the W3C's member portal. We figured out how to do that, and he's been tapped as the alternate AC rep. And now I think the question is just getting this group support for the fairly minimal cost to send him to pay for his travel. So I just want to get a agreement from this group. You know, any concerns, but I'm +1 to this, and I think he can bring a lot of what we just talked about here, in addition to some of the other collaboration opportunities he'll be championing next week. +1 to all of it.
+1, but I would like in the future people. Look, for instance, there's very few people going to the AC meeting from North America. I looked through the to the list, and I noticed that all the sort of big tech people who are coming are on the TAG or the AV or the board of directors, which is having their summit there. And like Chris Wilson, Google, told me he'd never get travel approval had he not been on the AB. So,
Yeah.
So I think we need to ask people to say not, I'm going to go there and wave the OpenJS flag, that I'm going to go there and here are 3 things I'm going to look out for and report back to, or, talk, or, back channel with people and report back to, or, here's a position I'm going to take in the, open discussion on such and such a topic. I glanced at the agenda. I didn't see anything, the obvious, but that I think that going forward, whoever wants to represent, and possibly including you, really should have, at least 3 things they're trying to accomplish. I mean, that's what I had to do even when I was an AC tech rep for a big tech company. I had to say, here's who I'm going to talk to, over beer, and who about what, and maybe that's excessive for this, but we should have some idea of what OpenJS's agenda is. And people are good at saying, hey, okay, OpenJS sponsored me to come here, so I'm going to put on my OpenJS hat and make their argument. It doesn't mean I can't, but anyway, that's what makes sense to me, is going forward, people who want to represent us take the leadership of coming up with, say, at least 3 things they're trying to accomplish, which might be information, might be advocacy, might be whatever.
So if I recall correctly, and I need to go back and look through my notes, that Toby was planning to co-lead a workshop on like bringing open source developers into. Now, I'm not sure that made it onto the agenda, so that may or may not be happening at this point. I will take an action item to connect with Toby, like quick sync with him before, and maybe get some of those bullet points, and particularly since he wasn't able to make today's call, make sure he's briefed on what Leah shared, and we can have him report back at the next meeting.
But either you or Toby, just kind of here's Microsoft, we call them engagement plans. Here's what I'm planning to do, and what I think the business value is.
Leigh, you got your hand raised.
Yes, that was intentional this time. So I sort of agree with the spirit of what you're saying, but I'm not sure about instrumenting a hard like 3 things requirement, because sometimes things are more substantial than others, and one very substantial thing can actually be more important than 3 less substantial things.
Very good point. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that, but having an agenda is what
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, one big thing is, yes, outweighs 3 little things. I agree.
I like the framing of like, what's our engagement plan for this, you know, like clearly, and that's applicable to everything. We should work that into our terms for SME participation is like the engagement plan. So I think that's a great framing, because it could be 3 small things, it could be 1 big thing, it could be 1 big proposal. I think that's great. Fits the pattern. Okay, so moving us along to the next, so I will sync with Toby, but we will confirm our approval for that support. The next issue that Toby raised was issue 220. Well, actually, you know what? I'm going to stick with W3C theme. Advisory board nominations. That's issue number 223. This is still open, I think, through
No, it closed it.
It closed. Okay. Okay. Oh, it did. Yeah.
So it's now moot, I think.
All right. So it's moot.
Yeah, there's somewhere between 8 and 10 nominees. I don't for 6 positions. Yeah, again, if we want to do that, we would expect somebody to sort of have, if we're supporting them, they should have a plan of what they're trying to accomplish on the AB.
That's a fair point. So my note said that it closed on May 26th. So I must have.
That's the actual, I think the actual vote.
As on the
Actual
26th.
vote will open in the, I mean, well,
All right.
probably 20. Yeah, real soon now.
Okay, all right. Well, all right, then apologies to for getting that wrong, because I was like, okay, we got a little bit. Evidently not. So I guess I'll close this issue, and we will open a new issue for the nominees and a discussion on our ballot for that particular vote. Cool. All right, so then the next thing that Toby had opened on the repo was for the open source initiative rep, which was a liaison relationship we established in 2020 or somewhere around there, with Miles as our first representative. Miles has taken a step back from his open source engagement to do many other important things like raise small human beings. So we have an opening there, and he's resigned in a previous issue. So I guess the question here is like, what do we? I mean, I'm not on principle on the face of it, like opposed to say, yeah, we'll put someone new in as our designate to represent us, but is there anything that we are, to your point about engagement, is there anything that we're actively wanting to engage with the OSI on today? So I'm going to take silence as a negative. I'm not sure that this has been an acute problem for us, that we haven't had somebody representing us or reporting back. I will say that probably we could do a better job, surfacing any relevant communications from the OSI to our projects, but honestly, I'm not sure what those would have been in the last couple of years. Beyond the usual kind of organizational stuff. Should we table this until Toby can attend and maybe talk about what some of his goals would be for OSI engagement?
Sounds good.
Okay, all right, that sounds good to me too. Perfect, all right. So
But,
that
you know, I
gets,
think we shouldn't just go places because we're invited.
right,
We shouldn't just go there, oh, we need to show the flag to show that we're a, you know, important part of the community. I don't think we need to do that at this point. We need to, you know, invest wisely in things that have real payoffs. I have no position on whether OSI is important, but anybody who wants to represent us should have a pretty good idea of what they think our agenda at OSI is.
and I don't think, you know, there's anything, you know, wrong with us as a foundation saying, you know, we want to, because it's fairly easy to show support for a sibling or cousin org that's also trying to uplift open source, uplift developers. Like, you know, it's nice to kind of do a little co-market thing right there, but like that's different from, and we're going to send a representative to go like engage with policy or engage with your organization in some kind of meaningful way. And I just don't know that we have that thing right now with OSI. So you know, so yeah, okay, sounds good. We will table this until Toby can perhaps make the call and talk about perhaps what he would want to do, and we can go from there. All right, so those are sort of the recent pressing issues. Looking at time and looking at what we have left to cover. Or just in the announcements, mention the call for papers for Secure the Web Forward. We will do a couple things at OpenJS World next week. And I welcome your input on the issue if you have anything that you'd like to highlight in particular. But one is at the Collab Summit, a session on just our working group and a little bit of just news, how we work, like things that will be that we champion and how we support the projects. So that's at Collab Summit. And then on Friday, Jordan and Joe have graciously agreed to participate with me on a panel about how web developers are influencing web standards. And so that will be Friday, and I'll have to start a little note stack, but what we hope to do is highlight some examples from some of our projects about, you know, the history, how we've done this in the past, and what we are imagining for the future. So we'll probably name drop Leia a few times, all the awesome stuff she does. So so that's that. And we'll of course give you an update and readout of how those sessions went. We've totally out of time to talk about 173, but that's okay. The last thing is just, we've got the minutes from the previous meeting also up as a pull request. If you haven't had a chance to look at those, please do so. And +1, and then we'll get those merged in. So really full session today. Are there any other quick bits of business that we can tackle or highlight or put on the agenda for next time before we close out, because we got like 3 minutes left? No, okay, cool. No is a great answer. It's also a full sentence. No, period. So with that, I will stop the recording and say thank you all for your time and participation today. And we will see you all in 2 weeks.
Or next week.